today we are actually going to talk about counterfactual thinking in relationship. Now, how do we describe counterfactual thinking in relationship, Dr. Mathebula?
Mr. Stan.
Yes, Dr. Mathebula.
Yeah, what I'm saying to you, firstly, I think you need to analyze, the meaning of the word, counterfactual. If I explain it, in terms of psychology, you may be confused. But take the two words, counter and fact. It means that counterfactual means you are countering the facts.
Yes.
For example, let me give you something positive in the Bible. His Holiness Jesus Christ says, when you are poor, say, I am rich, which simply means that the fact is you are poor.
Yeah.
And when you say I am rich, you counter the facts. When I am sick, say I am healed. Now, in other words, the real situation is you are sick. But when you say I'm healed, you are countering the facts. That's first you need to understand that. Now, in other words, counterfactual thinking is a concept in psychology that involves the human tendency to create possible alternatives to life events that have already occurred.
Oh, okay.
I didn't say occurred. I said occurred.
Now, today, many people are actually frustrated because they look through the rear view mirror, Dr. Mabila Mathebula. Is that statement correct?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people, when they face challenges, the normal reaction is to look back through a rear view mirror. For example, if I still had that boyfriend, my life would have been very progressive. If I didn't resign from that job, I would be a millionaire. If I resigned from my job and started my own business, I would be very rich. Now, more often than not, when people look at the current situation, they reflect that and they look at the rear view mirror and say, but what if, why, what if, and they try to seek fundamental answers. But unfortunately, there are no answers. Like Gertrude Stein said, there's no answer, there's never be an answer, there'll never be an answer, and that's the answer.
And then which becomes a bit of a problem because it becomes what we can call a bad reflection, which is then followed by evaluation of the current events or current mode, Dr. Mathebula.
Yeah, for example, it starts off with a reflection. For example, let me give you an example. A person might say, I almost got married to a successful businessman when I was still young.
Yes.
And beautiful. But my parents were opposed to that relationship. It's a reflection. And after the reflection comes the evaluation.
Yes.
The evaluation says, I got married to a salesman because I failed to get married to a businessman.
So all of those things, they are looking at them in a perhaps more positively. What could have happened would have been positive as opposed to the current situation now. So let's talk about now an unfortunate situation that is reflecting. What could that be?
Yeah, an unfortunate situation could be, I nearly got married to a man who was sentenced to life imprisonment 5 years ago for being a serial killer, And then that's a reflection. And the evaluation, I was fortunate to not being married to him because he chose my friend over me and took her to the altar. It means that they got married. Vision, when you say, I'm going to marry you to a woman, that don't say anymore that I'm going to marry you. Say to her, I'm going to take you to the altar.
The altar.
Yeah.
No more the aisle. You see, I'm using new words.
So in other words, now this person is looking at it in a positive form, Dr. Mabila Mathebula, to say, had it not been for that unfortunate event, I would have been now a wife to a serial killer or somebody that is in prison now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Counterfactual thinking is not necessarily a bad thing. You might actually say that had that woman agreed to my proposal, I would be married to a Siboto now. Now it's good that she never agreed to your proposal, because at the moment you can hardly look at her. As Professor Nguguwathi Yonga said, one could tell from the look in her eyes that she had once been beautiful. But time and bad conditions do not favor beauty.
Yeah, but one man's choice is another man's treasure.
Yes, they use it like that. Now, counterfactual, what do we call it? Thinking, Dr. Mabila Mathebula. Thinking. It's a thought about what might have been. What if I could have done it differently, right? So what are some of those thoughts that might happen or pop up in somebody's brain now?
It's a very good question, Mrs. Stan, and I'm glad you brought it up. For example, one might actually say, if I never dropped out of my first girlfriend's life, I would have been happy in my marriage. Now, in other words, this is a person who's in a relationship or who's in a marriage, and he's very unhappy. And then he's recapturing the past, and he says, but if maybe I still had my first girlfriend, I would be a man who's happily married.
Another example, Dr. Mathebula?
Another example would be, if I never divorced my husband, I would be financially viable. Now you have got a person who's actually living in abject poverty, and then she was once married and she was financially viable, and now she's living in abject poverty, and now she regrets. And then she said, had the divorce not happened, should be financially viable.
Very, very interesting, Dr. Mabila Mathebula. Another one?
Well, if that man did not leave me, I'll be owning a house in Sentin. Instead of living in a mukuku. Now I'm living in a mukuku in a squatter camp. But if that man did not leave me 5 years or 10 years ago, I'll be owning a mansion in Sentin.
Would you have any thoughts, for instance, if you had a stillborn baby, for instance?
I mean, you could say, if we did not have 5 stillbirth babies, our children should be working and supporting us financially. These are the people who had misfortunes, in terms of, a wife giving birth to, a stillborn child. And then they reflect after 30 years that, like now we are 2, we don't have even a child. But had those children lived, they will be supporting us financially and looking after us.
Now, now, Dr. Mabila Mathebula, now a reflection of, let's say, a woman is just sitting, and whether she's sitting in a let's say she's sitting in a Land Rover, Dr. Mabila Mathebula, and she looked at somebody who once proposed her, who is walking around with tattered clothes. What can she reflect?
Yeah, well, you can say that if Stan was my husband, I would be a happy woman on earth. Because Stan is engaging, Stan is intelligent, Stan is educated, Stan is quick-witted, Stan is good-looking, and then Stan has got a golden voice. You have got all these attributes to extol a woman's charms. And someone is sitting there and say, if Stan was my husband, I'll be the happiest woman on earth.
You see, Dr. Mabila Mathebula, I don't know how many women are actually listening, because all of the things that you said are actually true, Dr. Mathebula.
Yeah. Very true.
But Stan,
Yes, Dr. Mathebula.
It reminds me of a poem. I didn't say poem, I said poem.
Willem food.
Yeah.
And I think with your vision it's better. With us, our teachers in primary school, they didn't know that it was a poem. They said it was a recitation.
Oh yeah, yes.
And they didn't understand because like you recite. To recite is a verb, and recitation, recitation it's a noun. So now they didn't actually understand, to recite and recitation, what's the noun and what was the verb. But what I'm saying to you is that there was a boy who was actually seated next, next to a railway line, and then he was sitting under a shade of a tree. And then a train passed by, and there were some passengers on the train. And the people on the train, they were eating, they were drinking. And then when they looked at that boy, they wished they had been that boy, because that boy was relaxing, because they've been traveling for a long distance. And then when the boy looked at those people, because he was very hungry, he wished he was on the train. The same applies to life. People say that I wish I was Vision, but Vision has got its own challenges. I wish I was President Ramaphosa. President Ramaphosa wishes he was you, to move without bodyguards. And what we call is reposalie in French, meaning how I wish to be there.
Now, Dr. Mabila Mathebula, people, especially when they're growing up, they meet each other. Sometimes they suss each other out, and they look at you, and then they see some kind of potential. And I'm sure it is also true with people that become president. Now that you spoke about the president, and now that woman who's sitting there, and who was once proposed either by Cyril or Obama or anybody that is a president. Now, what is it that they reflect upon now, Dr. Mathebula?
Well, you remind me of Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, the other day, was with his wife. And then she made a detour, and then she spoke to a sweeper, something like 30 minutes. And then Winston Churchill was now agitated. I said, but why are you talking, why are you talking to that beggar? And the wife said, no, when we were young, this guy had a crush on me. And then Churchill, said, you know what, it means that if I'd never married you, you'd have been married to a sweeper. and the wife responded. And he said, no, you was not going to be a sweeper. You are going to be the prime minister, because when I met you, you were not a prime minister. Even though this guy was going to be a prime minister.
Now, Dr. Mabila Mathebula, CFT, right? Is often tormenting, and in order for it to not torment you, what are the things that we must try and do as people?
Yeah, firstly, you need to accept your current situation. Where you are is where you are supposed to be. Where you are, fate brought you to where you are today. And now you'll be tormenting yourself and say, I wish I had met with so and so. I wish so and so never departed from my life. I wish so and so never. Like there are some people who came across tragedies. You had a girlfriend who died, or you had a boyfriend who died, or was murdered, or was hijacked, or was involved in a car accident. And then now you find yourself in a particular situation or in a particular relationship, and always you are regretting and say, had that man lived, I'll be a better person, I'll be a better husband, or I'll be a better wife. Now you end up tormenting yourself. Now, in other words, you need to make, lemon. You need to make lemonade out of that lemon. So basically, the onus lies with us to ensure that for whatever situation, we are the only ones that can turn it around, and stop reflecting about things that are not going to assist us with anything, Dr. Mathebula. Absolutely. Like Paul says, I learned to be content. There are things that you need to learn. You need to learn to be content with your relationship. You need also to learn to love. Last week when I was in the studio, I gave an example of Rachel, of Jacob, that the woman that he loved died. you know, and the woman that he didn't love survived. Now God put him in that situation so that he can now learn how to love.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Mabila Mathebula. Today, I'm so excited because I know somebody is smiling who's sitting next to me. Why are you smiling, young man?
Vocabulary cabinet.
Dr. Mabila Mathebula is smiling because the vocabulary cabinet came back today. What do we have in our vocabulary cabinet?
Yeah, well, Mara, before I talk about the vocabulary cabinet, there's a quotable quote from Rabbi Heschel. And then he says, we are closer to God when we're asking questions than when we think we have got the answers.
We are closer to God when we are asking questions than when we think we got the answers.
When you say why God, you become closer to Him.
Sounds nice.
Yeah.
And then our first word is elegic. And then I'm interested in terms of the connotation, or the meaning. I think we know the other connotation. I'm allergic to milk. I'm allergic to whatever, medicine and blah blah, or to penicillin and the like. But now this has got a different connotation, if not meaning. And allergic means having a strong dislike of something. And I gave an example. Vision is especially allergic to criticism of his music.
Are you, man? Are you? Yeah.
This is an example.
But you
So Vision is especially allergic to criticism of his music. So the word is
music, yeah.
allergic.
Yes.
Allergic, yeah.
Dr. Mabila Mathebula, ati zinonga Tshivenda ri allergic.
allergic.
Yeah. No, there's no problem. Mother tongue influence is very important.
AmaZulu sithi ama allergy. Unama allergy. You don't say you are allergic. Unama allergy.
There we go.
Dr. Mabila Mathebula, and then the next one.
The next one is, calibrate. To calibrate is to correct or measure degrees. And then in this context, we can say Vision failed to calibrate his criticism of Prince in terms of what he said about Tumi's music.
Vision.
Yeah.
It's example.
But I like that example very much, Dr. Mabila Mathebula. I wish you can say that again.
Yeah, because Vision.
I say Vision failed to calibrate his criticism of Prince in terms of what he said about Tumi's music.
It's only examples.
No,
It's
not.
For MK to understand.
Oh, okay, all right. Dr. Mabila Mathebula, yeah. It is an example, and it's a very good example. Now, Dr. Mabila Mathebula, thank you so very much. We know that whenever you have time, you come in and we do the show together. But I know that today you said you are somewhere in Soweto, in Shawelo, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me be a counterfactual thinker. How I wish I was recording this show in the studio. I'll be the happiest man on earth.
Can I ask?
Dr. Mabila Mathebula, there's one question that the young man here wants to ask you.
I keep hearing you guys say Eshawelo. I want to buy Eshawela.
No,
so which one is correct?
No, I didn't say Shawelo. I said Chiawelo.
Chiawelo.
Oh, that's what I'm want to buy Eshawela.
The correct pronunciation. No, the correct
It's
pronunciation.
Chiawelo.
There we go. The incorrect one.
Also, Tina Mazulu vele si Roma tsi Eshawela.
Yes.
wrong.
Dr. Mabila Mathebula, did you hear the question?
Yeah, about Shawela.
Yeah. In fact, he even put a, and there's no a there. There's no Eshawela.
Angit mauti is you say like in
No,
Zulu
no,
that's
no.
a place,
No.
not HOZ, you know.
It's fine, but the place is not called Eshawelo.
Yeah, that's what I've got.
Eshawela.
My friend is actually he's responsible, nationally for this geographical name council. He's a chairperson, and then I spoke to him about it because I said Shawela. It's not Shawela. It's Shawero.
Yes.
That people must now actually pronounce this word correctly.
So it's what can I pronounce it?
Chiawelo.
Chiawelo.
Yeah, Chiawelo,
Chiawelo.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The Chiawelo.
Vision sometimes get it right. But thank you so very much, Dr. Mabila Mathebula. We really appreciate your time every time.
Okay, thanks, guys, and enjoy the rest of the show, and then stop counterfactual thinking, and be content with what you have, and make the best of what you have. Thank you, guys.